The fucking show. I think we're live. Yeah, it says we're live. So another one of these days of Russian roulette with whether things go well or not. We are wild card weekend here. Barely made it here, and I'm Cris. I'm with Ron. What's going on, Ron? I'm disorganized.
Well, we didn't even have a chance to say hi because both of us said, oh, 12 o'clock, we got to get on. We got to see what we're going on, what's going on here. But we'll still put some coherent thoughts together and we'll get ready for the playoffs. 18 weeks under the books, no more college games. We are winding down, 13 games left in the schedule.
Only 13 games left?
13 games. That's all you get.
Well, that doesn't sound lucky. So digesting week 18 and anything that you want from the season. What say you? How did your last week go with all those bets of yours?
Yeah, it was literally one of the best weeks I've ever had, with the exception of misjudging a couple over-unders. My over-unders were 1 and 3. I'd rather start with the bad news first. I really misjudged the Houston-Indianapolis game on Saturday. I really thought that Minshew would be forced to throw a lot, but Indianapolis was content to hopefully get in position to score and win the game because of a missed extra point earlier by running the ball time after time. I thought that strategy was not good at all. Why are you not passing against a Houston team that allows 68% for the season? But I misjudged it. They did not want the ball in Minshew's hands, apparently. So that game and the Seattle game, which I thought would be a total shootout, which wasn't a shootout, were my two misfires. Any thoughts on that?
Did you notice in that Houston game how Stroud was not used properly? I mean, they buttoned him up. There was a couple fourth downs that they didn't use him on. I'm trying to remember what else there was about him, but they kind of reined him in.
Yeah, I don't know if they thought, hey, this is a playoff road game atmosphere. Let's be a little bit more cautious with him. Let's remember he's a rookie. There's a lot of dynamics that are going on. I know that Stroud played in a lot of big games in college, but this is the NFL on road turf. It's not a neutral site game like some of the college playoff games. Maybe they just wanted to rein him in a little more. Maybe because there was meat on the table against Indianapolis that doesn't have a shutdown run or pass D, just kind of average in those areas, that they thought they could balance it off a little more.
Well, I was surprised at Jacksonville's inability to ever be in that game. I mean, that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I would say, as long as we're on the topic of misjudging, I wanted Tennessee in that game, and I did have Tennessee in that game, but I also had Jacksonville to start the week at -3, and the line, I was waiting for 6, and it came down instead of up. So it really was, in terms of if you want to do whether or not that was a full play or a big play, a large play, it turned out to be like a third of a play. It wasn't a big thing for me because I misjudged the line. And I think in terms of what you're saying about Jacksonville, this was really about their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, not being healthy. And the whole last half of the season showed that, plus some defensive error. They're not a complete team defensively, as it turns out.
Trying to think what else from last week. I forgot last week's schedule, so I'm forgetting who played. But Philadelphia, that was a surprise. I think they finished the season 1-7. Is that correct?
They were bad. Obviously, we talked about this the last couple of weeks, where we kept waiting for Philly to materialize. And no, they are exactly what they were this year. And that was pretty darn average this year. That was a spot for the Giants. It was a good spot for the Giants. It was one of the success stories on this was probably my second or third best week in the last 5 years. when you look at all the fourth quarter moves, the quarter moves, the half moves, anticipating the Cincinnati game, everything was tied to Cincy for me. Every single thing pretty much was tied to Cincinnati, in my opinion. We talked about this. I tweeted this, and I may have talked to you about this. The New Orleans-Atlanta game, which you were right on. You had the right side on that game, Atlanta. When Kamara went out of the game and Ritter was the starter instead of Heineke, that were two red flags for me. And I had to bail. I actually left a 1-star play still on Atlanta on the table, which I lost. But I had Taysom Hill stuff. I had some in-game stuff with the Saints. Atlanta was a different team because Kamara actually had negative value in that game. So congratulations on having the right side. But at least this time, congratulations on me on recognizing it and getting out of a bad situation.
Yeah, I was pretty confident on that New Orleans. I could not understand that move down. I mean, I understand the historical issues. And, there were a lot of games, the New England game in particular had just a huge trend that favored the Jets and a huge trend that went against that went against the Jets and went in favor. And there was another one that went in favor of the Patriots. And, as I was arguing the game with somebody else, I go, well, these have to lose. I mean, they don't all win just because they're highly favorable or unfavorable. There are the exceptions to the rule, and you got to be able to recognize that. And there's been so many examples in sports recently where, and it's across all sports, where you're getting very unusual results that are very atypical of past history and performance. So you can't be tied in too much with previous data history because the games are always constantly evolving. And I had a feeling that game was not going to be teaser friendly, and I didn't have a single teaser either direction, even though it had a super low total. I think it closed at 28.5, 29, and it was around a pick 'em. So normally I might be teasing that game both ways, and I didn't. So dodged a bullet there. The Lions did exactly what I thought that they would do, and they showed up. I was surprised they played the starters so long. Goff played the entire game. I realized afterward when Tua passed him for passing yardage that maybe he was chasing that passing yardage title.
Yeah, on the two games you mentioned, I didn't have any significant situations going against the Jets. I didn't have anything actually going for the Jets. The only thing I had in that game, and I didn't play the game, by the way. I was stubborn. I waited for 3. I didn't want to be one of those people that said I forced a bet on the Jets of all teams. But the Jets had 10 days to prepare. In New England, we know this was not Bill Belichick's finest coaching moment with special teams and turnovers. With the Lions, you and I was texting you during the game. I said, I was waiting for Goff to leave the game so I could bet Minnesota, and he never left the game.
No.
So it was crazy. But I had Detroit. I did not understand the line move from 5 to 3, closing at 3.5. I had them first quarter. I had second quarter. I had them first half. To me, Minnesota's volatility in the turnover ratio game was going to be too much to overcome in this one. Detroit wanted to get that bad taste out of their mouth. That was a game I had significantly good results on as far as analyzing that game.
I had a feeling I was on the wrong side of the Bears just, shortly before the game went. Yeah. It just was too easy. And those public dogs are really tough to bring home, so to speak. Yeah. So, and I should have teased some Cincinnati, and I didn't. So
Cincinnati was, to me, the standout play. It was the second best standout play of the year behind the Jacksonville-Buffalo London game for me. The Green Bay situation, I had everything favoring Green Bay. The only thing I didn't have favoring Green Bay that kept me scared is that have to win, have to lose kind of situation where, okay, you have to pay a premium. So I did two things. One, I got lucky on, but everything tied to Cincinnati. I took the money line Green Bay instead of giving points, tied to Cincinnati. and I did the Seattle game of all, because I like Seattle, but as we talked about last week, I thought we were paying too much of a premium. Seattle should not have been a favorite in that particular game, but I thought Seattle's history at Arizona and Arizona's emotional win the week before when they came from behind and that kind of situation would drive me to Seattle, but I couldn't lay the points. So it turned out lucky.
That's why I took Seattle first quarter, but I was surprised to see them come back because they knew they were done. I mean, in the third quarter, they knew they were out of it. So, and they had given up the lead, and you kind of expected them to. I had some Seattle, and I'm like, well, I can kiss that goodbye. But they came back and they won. So,
two missed field goals saved me on the parlays. So I do appreciate that. Sometimes you get some positive luck in your favor, and I got that. Some of the down games, knowing that once I had my notes. If Vegas had the lead at halftime, they're going to milk the clock, bet the unders in the third, fourth quarter, especially the fourth quarter. Kansas City and the Chargers, that was going to be an ugly game from the start. No problem betting the unders in that game. We talked about San Francisco and the Rams. They're two playoff teams. The last thing they wanted to do was get a player hurt in the third or fourth quarter, play the unders in the fourth quarter. Meaningless games, but great week 18 situations.
Buffalo came away with that victory, but still not impressed by them. There's something wrong with that team.
Yeah, I got some weird information there. At first, Waddle was playing, and I said, okay, I'm going to stick with Miami +3 bet. Then I hear that Waddle might not play, and I said, I don't want Miami without Waddle because the situation, as we talked about, you can't name a wide receiver 3 on Miami that is anywhere close to what Waddle is. And I talked about that. I mean, this isn't second guessing. This is right away. I talked about that situation. You can't go in and just have Tyreek Hill and nobody else to throw to. Tua did his best under the circumstances.
And you could see that Tua didn't have anybody to throw the ball to. So, he's basically playing with one arm tied behind his back. I do think that he's going to get people back this week, but I'm not sure about that. Do you have any update on that?
I think Waddle will play, but they lost 2 defensive starters that are definitely not playing from the Week 18 game.
Both edge rushers?
Yeah, one of them had surgery, so he's out already. And the other one is going to be out maybe all the rest of the playoffs anyway. He would come back if Miami went to the Super Bowl. That's about it. So we're really talking about a Miami team that's very depleted defensively. And, we'll talk about the teams this week. I want to see if there's anything else I want to add. Well, Dallas, Washington, I think we talked about the fact that if once Washington got behind by double digits, it wasn't going to get any better for them.
Yeah.
I laid something like 19 in the middle of the game because to me, that was it for Washington. I think you texted me something about home teams. If they're up, like the Giants, that's one thing. But if they're down like Washington, they just quit. And that was a very, how should I say it? That a tweet that was accurate or a text that was accurate.
Do you think Tennessee made a mistake firing Vrabel?
Did he fire? Oh, I haven't been around this morning. They fired him?
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic move. I think Vrabel
for Tennessee.
Yeah. My personal feelings about Vrabel is he is number 1 in the NFL at understanding 2 things. The rules, number 1. Nobody knows the rules and how to exploit them better than him. And it's helped them win a couple of games. And his ability to defend the run, very similar to an Antonio Pierce and a D'Amico Ryans. They come in with this linebacker mentality and their teams stuff the run. But Vrabel was light years behind in understanding offensive scheme, in understanding how to build a coaching staff, in pass defense concepts. I do think it was time for a change. And I didn't hear that news, so that's interesting.
I just can't help but think that Tennessee's not a desirable job. I mean, this is there's about 5 positions already open, and there'll be a handful more. And Tennessee's going to be at the bottom of the desirable list. And in the meantime, he's going to get his pick of the litter. He's probably going to be the second or third most sought after coach now.
Yeah, I think he'll get another job. We'll see how that goes. I think he needs to surround himself with offensive quarterback coach, coordinator, and so on that take the decisions out of his hands. Let him stick to defense, get a good secondary coach. It's not always just what your head coach is. It's about the whole picture. Comment in the chat about not a fan of Tua from Quam Tom there. Without him, he's just another Mac Jones. I think he's better than that. His release and his accuracy over the middle, fantastic. There's no doubt, however, that Tua is in the system that maximizes his strengths. To be with Mike, his coach, to be with that offensive system, to have a guy who can catch the ball in stride, because Tua throws the ball, a very catchable in stride ball. But if you don't have Tyreek Hill catching the ball, you're not going to break it for 80 yards. So he has the weapons that enhances him, but he's also clearly better than Mac Jones.
Well, and he finished near the top, in the top 5 in so many quarterback metrics this season, and nobody thought he could last a full season, and he did. So, got to give the tip of the cap to him. I think he's done a fine job.
Yeah, and I love the fact, we talked about this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, of all the quarterbacks that stayed healthy this year, Tua and Lamar Jackson were 2 of the 4 that played just about every snap. Lamar didn't play week 18 by choice, but who would have ever believed that at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, nobody. Nobody. Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, that's why when you're trying to handicap, different things like, who you're going to go under or over in terms of season performance, you would say, oh, Kirk Cousins, he's not going to miss a game. This quarterback not going to miss a game. How could you ever bet on Lamar Jackson overs because he's going to miss time? It's crazy the way it works.
Well, looking forward, as far as the season as a whole, maybe we'll take a look at that at a different time, obviously. But looking ahead at Wild Card Weekend, we've got Cleveland at Houston. That line kind of surprised me a little bit. Did it surprise you at all?
Surprised me a lot. I would have made this game pretty much pick 'em, to be honest. I would not have made Cleveland favored even by 1 point, to be honest, in this game. I understand the playoff experience of Cleveland. You've got Joe Flacco. Everybody's in love with what he does. And he just put up a whole bunch of yards against Houston in late December. I think it was December 24th that he put up a whole bunch of yards. So that game, Cleveland at Houston, Cleveland led that game. What was something like 36-7, if I'm correct, going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that was without Stroud, though, right?
Without Stroud, that is correct. But it does say something about how Houston's defense is going to have to step up to the plate in this game.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. I agree with your assessment on the line. I think that my numbers actually do. I thought my numbers would come out with Houston favored, but they actually did come up with Cleveland favored. So that was my first surprise. But that strong 2.5 or 3 is a little strong. It certainly looks very teaser friendly. But I think you have to give the tip of the cap to Cleveland. They had a chance to rest their players. And my big worry is, and I don't have the exact stats, but let's just say for sure, I'm positive that rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs do not fare well. So I'm sure that that's factored in this line also.
Yeah, you are correct about that. You can be positive about that. The flip side, somebody would say, is Stroud did not put up a rookie quarterback stat line. He put up a seasoned quarterback stat line. We've seen so many good rookie good quarterbacks in the NFL. Hall of Fame quarterbacks have miserable rookie seasons, and Stroud was not one of them. So do we go with the general rookie trend, or do we go with, the fact that Stroud is a little bit better than what he's performing at a rookie. And how much weight, Cris, do you put on the fact that, in a sense, Houston's already played one playoff game, and that was last week?
There's a few ways I'm looking at it. You just mentioned that I feel like they already played their first playoff game, number one. Number two, you're looking at a situation where quarterbacks like Burrow and Stroud come out of these national championship games that were highly stressful, highly visible, and they come out smelling like a rose. In today's day and age, we underappreciate the fact that, these people have been groomed and are used to attention and television. And it's not like when we went to school in the horse and buggy, and TV was like really amazing to be on. And it was a lot of pressure. These guys don't care. It's part of everyday life, especially with social media and all the videos and stuff like that. So that's one level of pressure that I don't think that these guys are kind of feeling. I think he's demonstrated the entire season, amazingly enough. And it makes perfect sense, because I thought the guy was going to be a loser, because I pick all the wrong quarterbacks. I'm Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning type bad. So, I thought Chuck Long and Andre Ware were going to be great quarterbacks. So I thought Stroud would suck. So he's obviously going to be one of the best all time. But I think he demonstrated it all season long. And there were a lot of games where he had to bring them from behind, or there were high leverage situations. And I don't think you can categorize him as a, quote, rookie category type quarterback.
Yeah, I prefer to handicap this game without that knowledge, just looking at the metrics and other situations, and leave that out of the equation. Because what you said about, groomed for this is absolutely correct. And there's another side to it too. In general, college quarterbacks are playing more pro-type offenses now, or the flip side, the pro game is adapted to some of the college running quarterback, move the pocket kind of thing, which bodes well for college quarterbacks if they're good enough as well. It really goes down to the offensive line for rookie quarterbacks. I'll say it again. How good is your offensive line? And Stroud, believe it or not, has kind of overcome a very average offensive line.
I have to bring this up, slight change of topic. Did you watch the game last night at all?
Yes. Very much so, with all my props.
I could not. I mean, the preparation, and obviously I'm a Michigan fan, but I didn't have a wager on the game, but I just was rooting for him. I could not believe how well prepared that team was, and I cannot believe all the one-on-one open field tackles and the fundamentals that they had, and it just pales in comparison to some of the other teams. I've been watching that Prime documentary on Deion Sanders, and watching that team go through their trials and tribulations. And it's and you see all the highlights of how their games are going. And you go on and you look at a Michigan-Washington game where both of those teams were very well prepared. Had great fundamentals. Just a really fun game to watch, just because on the talent purposes. You didn't have these big blowout mistakes type things, free for all. You had these guys playing hardcore fundamental football, and that touches on what you were saying, where these kids are coming out far better prep than they used to.
Yeah, let's deviate and talk just a drop about that game. I hadn't thought about that point, but the tackling in that game was really excellent. And it was especially excellent when teams were fighting for that extra yard for third to make that first down on third down. These guys were sticking to making the tackle, and basically you saw a lot of 4th and shorts, 4th and 3 or shorter. Sometimes you punted, sometimes you went for it, but regardless, a tackle was not missed. I thought Michigan was very well prepared. We saw glimpses of what Edwards did, the running back that supplements Corum, what he did in 2022 when he broke off long run after long run that year. His yards per carry, I was commenting in the article, 7.1 in 2022 and 3.5 this past year. And it was as if he was back to 2022 with what was going on. And Washington, to their credit, also schemed a lot of wide receivers open. It just Penix had a bad day. By the fourth quarter, he was beat up. They were one-dimensional, which they would have been even if their running back was completely healthy. And Michigan's pass rush against Washington's offensive line was going to be the story of the day. And to a lot of extent, Michigan's pass rush created Penix having to throw without that extra second of space where he could just thread the needle. And he was definitely not threading the needle.
I think the difference in that game was probably that Michigan had been to that game before, or not to that championship game, but had been to the playoffs 2 previous times. And it was Washington's first visit. And Washington made a lot of little errors that would have changed the entire complexion of that game, missing wide open receivers and a little this and a little that would have changed the whole perspective or the whole flow of the game. Mm-hmm. But I also, by the same token, think that Michigan was kind of playing with their food a little bit also, kind of running vanilla. And if the pressure had been put on them sooner, I think that they would have been responding differently also.
McCarthy made one throw near his own end zone on a third down, and the tight end, I think, on that play, Loveland, made a tremendous catch, but it was a good throw. That particular play, I think, was the play of the game.
That was an amazing catch, but they missed they botched a clear holding call on that. I don't know whether you're aware of that.
I heard some commentary on that, but in general, I think because of Michigan's ability to run the ball, which was going to happen at some point in that game, Michigan was the better team. But if they played it 10 times, I think Washington could have eked out 3 or 4 wins just because of their passing scheme. They have some tremendous weapons, and now they'll play each other next year.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the better team won. At least it wasn't the most exciting game, but it was functional. And as a Michigan fan, and this touches on the NFL, I'm so GD sick of hearing about Harbaugh. Where is he going? As a Michigan fan, as much as we love him and he's done a great job, if you can't shut this crap up, then get the hell out of Dodge is the way I'm starting to feel. And I don't even know who you replace him with. But this every single year, is he going to the NFL? Is he not going to the NFL? Is just that's taxing. It's just so annoying.
This media stuff you mentioned, everybody's in front of the spotlight now. Why can't for one day some announcer say, you know what, I'm not going to ask these questions. Enjoy your national championship for 24 hours. Can we not do that?
We got to get back on topic.
Yeah, let's go Miami, KC then.
It's going to be cold. Cold.
Yeah. I'm staying indoors. I will say this, and I said this last week. Kansas City is going to feel so good and is feeling so good. They got a bye last week. They got locked into the number 3 seed. And I cannot emphasize how much of an advantage that is for Mahomes to get his wide receivers in tow, for the defense to regenerate, for the running back Pacheco, who is kind of banged up, to get back into rhythm. Everything about that for Kelsey, who hasn't been playing 100%, to get back into rhythm. I cannot think of a better bye situation this entire season, other than maybe that London game again that Kansas City has this week, facing a Miami team that just lost 3 more players.
Well, it's funny you bring this team up because, the narrative here is that Miami basically is coming in on crutches and wheelchairs, and it's just a matter what the final score is. I don't think it's that dire because Kansas City doesn't have a shutdown offense like they used to. Do you honestly believe that Miami is more overmatched than the current 3.5-4 point spread?
I think you're paying a premium for the spread. I knew as soon as the line came up, whatever happened is probably going to go up, because you're going to hear more about the injuries. You're going to hear about Kansas City's rest. You're going to hear about Reed with rest time to prepare and stuff like that. I think at full strength, this is a pick'em game this year. At full strength, this is a pick'em game. But to think that Miami is anywhere close to full strength and not factoring in that Kansas City extra week of rest, I just think Miami's unlucky in falling into this situation. Just played a divisional game, just had the tie on a big punt return. The whole tide turned in that Miami game. They were beating Buffalo 14-7. That was at worst for Miami, a toss-up game. I think the events that have happened in the last 10 days, it's just not good for Miami.
No, it isn't. But I was looking at futures, and generally I kind of shy away from the futures, in the playoffs, because you can usually run them through, game by game better. But have you taken a look at any of the teams to find any value whatsoever? I mean, we obviously know you can't look at San Francisco and Baltimore. They're too short. So have you looked at any of the numbers, and do you see any value whatsoever? And if so, who?
Yeah, you caught me napping on this because of all the stuff that I've been doing. When it used to be a 12-team playoff, I did that all the time. 14 teams and the one bye week instead. It's been a little harder for me to find some value, but I used to do that a lot. Just run different probabilities. Just use math. 60% chance to win this game, 60% chance to win that game, add it up, compare it to the line, what's the return on investment, and go from there. So I'm kind of blind on this. I think I'm curious as to what Kansas City's number is, since we're talking about Kansas City.
Well, that's what I'm trying to ask is, I spent a lot of time on Monday looking at just any of the plausibilities and all the storylines and trying to figure out, okay, well, if you take this team, you don't necessarily need them to win at all, because you can get out of it. So you're really trying to look at what can happen after one or two games, and what position that's going to put you in. When I look at the NFC, I don't see as much opportunity there, because I think it's possible Green Bay beats Dallas. I think it's possible the Rams beat Detroit. I think Tampa Bay can do some damage, possibly, but they're all going to bounce into San Francisco, and I don't think any of them. You really need San Francisco to get injured. I don't think any of those teams can get through San Francisco. So where is that going to leave you? So I don't see as much value. But when you look at the AFC, so I say the NFC only has so many different things that can happen. When you look at the AFC, well, that's wide open. You can't even trust Baltimore to run the table at this point, even with the home field. We know how goofy they are. I mean, do I fully expect them to? They damn well should with that team. They've got the home field. Jackson's healthy. The team's going to be healthier. They get the bye week, basically 2 bye weeks. So, but when you look at every other game, Cleveland or Houston can win that game. Miami or Kansas City can win that game. I don't think Pittsburgh can win that game, but how good is Buffalo really? If that's a snow-filled mess, anything can happen in a game like that. But even if Buffalo goes through, they're not heads and shoulders over any of the other teams. So, you sit there and you look at that whole AFC, and it's like there has to be value in here with the parity that's in the AFC right now. So that's where my first look was.
Yeah, we'll talk about Pittsburgh, Buffalo, but I think. Well, first of all, I don't think Miami is built to run the table with their current roster. So I don't see them as a threat. I think Baltimore would shred them offensively if they played under these circumstances. My biggest question is, Kansas City's defense is formidable enough to do some damage against Lamar Jackson should those teams play. The way I look at it right now, that game would not be until the title game, because if Kansas City and Buffalo hold serve, then they would play each other automatically.
Well, and that's where I'm going. So I'm looking at this flow, And I'm like, okay, you've got Kansas City, a 3.5, 4-point favorite. And frankly, they should win that game. And then they're going to play again against Buffalo. And I
At
believe
Buffalo. At Buffalo.
But Kansas City can win anywhere. So the pressure is going to be on Buffalo there. Mm-hmm. And Kansas City can easily win that game. I mean, that line is certainly going to be less than a field goal, right?
It should be. My numbers don't have Kansas City as high as they need to be, but that could change this week based on Miami, because I would have to I have the formula where if Kansas City had a sizable win against Miami based on where their power rating is now, it would cause an automatic upgrade. So I could see this. You're right. I think the most we could possibly see is Buffalo. There'll be pushback with Mahomes in the building.
I mean, that line cannot hit 3. So
Yeah.
You're talking about Kansas City in game 2, and then they would face off against. It doesn't matter who they're facing off. They could technically win that game too. They're not going to be if they face the Ravens. What's the most that game could be? 4, 3.5, 4.
Kansas City, yeah, it would, because Kansas City would have 2 wins in a row. They would have some public sentiment at that point. Yeah, you're probably looking, unless Baltimore blew out whoever they played. If Baltimore ends up playing Houston would be in a tremendously negative situation in that game that we don't need to talk about now. But we don't expect Houston to win 2 in a row in the playoffs. At least I don't. And if Cleveland played Baltimore, you don't know for sure, because it's one of those divisional matchups and they know each other so well.
So with that in mind, we know that we were looking before last week's game. You commented that Kansas City went 6 or 7 games in a row with the rest disadvantage. They get that full week off. They get to refresh. They get a home game. They have the playoff experience. They have the playoff, the coaching, the everything. They're a little weak on offense, but and then another thing that was really important to me is I want to back a team. So I only use the choices of what teams do I have in the top 10 offensively and defensively that has a high price. So somebody, Russell mentioned Cleveland at 14-1. And yeah, I do kind of like Cleveland a little bit, but they're so far out of the top 10 offensively. If you look back, typically there are certain trademarks of teams that are winning the Super Bowl. And Cleveland is a real stretch, even though I do think that they could do damage and very well could get there. But the only team there's only 5 teams that are in the top 10 offensively and defensively. Do you have 5 teams also?
I haven't looked at it, so I would have to. I don't rank them that way. I kind of do the eyeball test. So 5 teams on the top 10 offensively and defensively. To me, that, if you ask me how many teams would be in the top 10 offensively and defensively, I'd say 5 would probably have been the ceiling. It's hard to be that good offensively and defensively.
But there's 5. I checked with a few other people that have and everybody came up with 5. So San Francisco, Dallas. I don't have my list handy. Baltimore. Who else are we missing?
I'm just going Dallas, Baltimore.
Did Buffalo make it? I think Buffalo made it.
They made it defensively. See, that's tougher for me. Although, let's see, where are they on sacks? Now, I mean, I could see you're talking top 10. Yeah, of course, Buffalo would be in the top 10. Yeah, but barely, I think.
Yeah, and then the 5th team is Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City. Kansas City's defense is really good this year.
So to win the AFC, when you know that they're going to have a home game and they couldn't be an underdog of more than that much at any point, what do you put there to win the AFC odds?
To win the AFC. Okay, so let me give point value differential. See, I think they would be 0.9 to win against Miami, personally. If you say that they're 0.5 to win against Buffalo, say it's a 50-50 game because it's at Buffalo, that would be 0.45. And then you think they're going to play Baltimore, but if Baltimore is a point, whatever, so, and you give them about 1 point points. I mean, I still think in general,
35% of the time, 40%.
Yeah, you're still probably maxing it out if you just go by those ratios at no more than 30%, probably 25%. So you're probably looking at you probably need plus 350 for value. I know that sounds weird because we're talking about KC, hey, don't they always play for the championship?
Well, you can easily get 5-1. And I took a number that was in the 600s for a hell of a lot of money. And I just think it's stealing in value. I just don't understand for the life of me how they could have had Kansas City at, I think it was plus 620 just to win the AFC.
Worst case scenario, I would say 0.9 times 0.5 times 0.33, whatever that comes out to. Somebody do the math. So worst case scenario is probably 5-1.
So we kind of we agree that at 6-1 there's value, and if you can find over 5-1, there's value.
So I think for the amount of preparation that you did, that was a tremendous conversation that we just had, because that wasn't on my radar screen. So thank you so much for that. Those things are very important, and there's like 4 teams that could actually win the Super Bowl this year, and that's it. So there's so many flaws in some of the other teams, and to string 4 wins together just seems very difficult.
Well, I'm going to be on both sides of that, man. Hey, Gizmo, buzz off. Shh.
I think Gizmo wants to make a point here.
Yeah, he does. He's like
barking dogs.
I guess, it's barking dogs time. Miami is the barking dog. So I'm going to have Miami as the value and the matchup here somehow. So, but I'm not playing them straight. I'm going to figure out something. But I think Kansas City wins a close game. They're never looking to blow out anybody, and Miami finds a way to not get blown out, don't they?
I'm going to find a way to put my mouth where my money is, or I've already done it. I took KC -3 and 3.5.
You laid 3.5? That's so unlike you.
It's very unlike me, but I absolutely love this situation. I think Miami, it's just the worst kind of situation for them to come into. And now you're asking them to play in 11 degrees.
Lead the discussion with Pittsburgh and Buffalo. Tell me why we should listen to anything.
Well, I will tell you this. There's something to be said. This is something I want you to comment on. Buffalo was left for dead, 6-7 weeks ago. They were the 10th or 11th AFC team. They stack win after win after win. Coming on Friday or Saturday, there was still a chance that Buffalo would not make the playoffs. By the time the game started, Buffalo knew they were in the playoffs, but obviously there's a difference between being the 2nd seed and the 6th or 7th seed, that what they were going to be doing. Then they're down 14-7, and then they get this tremendous punt return, and they're back in the game, and they find a way to win the game. At some point, you exhale. What are the chances that Buffalo has a letdown, even though it's the first round of the playoffs? And I think there is a chance.
Yeah, I'm not on this Buffalo bandwagon at all. It doesn't surprise me that game finished exactly the way it did with Miami, but it took, Miami losing some of their best players. It took, that idiotic kickoff return to put them in that position. So that's another reason why I kind of favored Kansas City, as the value, pre-flop into this into the playoffs. It doesn't mean that I think that they're going to win the Super Bowl. It just puts me in a position of being able to make some moves. And you can always protect your positions on futures also with, teaser options and such. And there's other ways to hedge your futures. So,
Yeah.
That was my outlook on that. But I don't have a lot of interest in this game. The total, the weather forecast changed a little bit this morning. The total was down to 35, but I saw it popped back up to 36.5 the last time I looked.
It opened around 38.5. That's kind of what I saw. Higher than that, yeah.
Yeah, it was because I was trying to get 41 and I missed the 41. And then I was taking 39.5, all I could eat. And it went down to 35.
Yeah, well, under Mason Rudolph, Pittsburgh has not turned the ball over because they haven't turned the ball over all year. I don't know if it's sustainable, but apparently it is. They're plus 11 in turnovers. And the other fact of Pittsburgh is that Mason Rudolph has led them to 27 points per game, and they're willing to stretch the field more. Now, what Russell just said is something that I've been talking about for years. They're a completely different team without TJ Watt. The one worry I have and why I would never consider laying Buffalo with that many points is that they are so due for a letdown. Humans are humans. They've geared themselves up to be in like 5 playoff games in a row. They're not playing a marquee so-called team. I mean, Pittsburgh is a marquee organization, but they're not a marquee team in the likes that, we have to beat Kansas City, we have to beat Baltimore. The human body just can't sustain week after week after week. I'm just concerned about Buffalo's letdown in this game. But I think they're the far better team in this situation.
Yeah, I think if they come away with the win, I certainly wouldn't be laying 10. But that Pittsburgh without Watt, they got problems.
It's so hard. They've been without Minka Fitzpatrick for a lot of weeks. Even if he comes back, he won't be 100%, but he's their playmaker in the secondary. Give credit to Pittsburgh's offensive line. They have played much better the second half of the season. They've opened up run holes. They've generally done a better job protecting their passer. I don't think this Buffalo defense is a shutdown defense. The path for Pittsburgh is to control clock and move the ball smartly. I could see that happening, but I still think at some point Buffalo and Josh Allen would be too much without TJ Watt on the field.
I don't know. This if you just step back and look at the Green Bay Dallas game, I think you pretty much know how it's supposed to go. The market tells you what's going to happen here. Don't you agree?
Well, all I know is Jordan Love's playing better ball, and Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat every week whenever there's a decision that goes not his way. And it's almost like Dallas, if they win, it's expected. If they lose, there they go again. I think there's a lot more pressure on Dallas in this game than Miami. If you look at the metrics itself, there's a lot of great things that Dallas does. But Green Bay's been steadily improving. I don't know what your numbers tell you.
Sure. By coincidence, it's this is actually pretty good here. No, this is the wrong one. Well, I don't know why I don't have this week's. What the hell? Well, I can't tell you exactly.
Okay.
I do know that there's a handful of teams that are in the playoffs that are all in that top 6 or 7 best over the last 5 weeks, and then you've got a handful of teams that are kind of backing into the playoffs, like Philadelphia and who else is backing in?
Well, Detroit's not playing their best ball.
Yeah, but they weren't at the bottom.
No, not at the bottom by any means. Cleveland's defense a little bit worse lately.
I don't think Green Bay was up there that much. Darn it! I don't know. I don't have this.
Do you care at all that Dallas went 8-0 at home during the regular season?
No, they shouldn't have won the last game they had at home.
Yeah. It's an interesting mark, but a lot of these things just go away in the playoffs. But I think people will bring that up. And I'm just curious as to how other people evaluate that. For me, it's not a big factor in this particular game.
San Francisco's the worst playing team in over the last 5 weeks out of the playoff teams, and then you've got Miami and Dallas and Philadelphia. So they're at the bottom over the last 5 weeks, and then you've got teams like I don't know how the hell it's possible, but Buffalo's up there at number 2. They certainly have been unimpressive. So that's an example of why. I think it's important that you have metrics that you're working off of, because you can't believe your lying eyes. But in my eyes, the Buffalo's been so for the last month. They're just barely getting these victories, but they're doing pretty darn well. You've got the Rams right up there at the top, Buffalo, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Detroit. Then you've got Pittsburgh and Green Bay.
Best thing about Buffalo is they've incorporated their running back Cook into the offense. And I think that eases the pressure on your defense. You don't want Josh Allen to throw 40 times, because in general, when you throw 40 times, that means your defense is going to be on the field more.
Jeez.
What other insight do you have on Green Bay, Dallas?
I think Green Bay is going to be a very public side, but I think the line's telling you that Dallas is better than the 7. And I would be careful. I mean, it feels like one of those games that Green Bay somehow wins outright or gets blown out. The Green Bay defense is pretty porous.
Yeah, so Dak Prescott led the league in touchdown passes this year at 36. Mm-hmm. And when he's on, it almost seems like this is the best offense in football.
I don't know how they're going to stop CeeDee Lamb. They don't have anybody that's going to be able to stop him at all. So
yeah, that's a good point too. And Green Bay's pass defense is average at best. Their ability to rush the passer, a little bit above average, not drastically above average this year because sacks are up, but still not bad in terms of rushing the passer. But if Dak Prescott has one of those really good games, it's going to be hard for Green Bay to keep up all the way through. And Dallas is good at takeaways. We know they have the league leader in interceptions the last 2 years, maybe the last 3 years even. So Jordan Love, he's thrown 1 interception in the last 7 or 8 weeks. So this will be a very interesting chess match.
Yeah, this one's the widest off number of the week for me. So I would just be cautious. Anybody looking at Green Bay, it looks pretty tasty, but be careful. Rams.
If Dallas wins, then they play
Dallas or the Rams.
Okay, and they host that game.
They would host that game.
Okay. But they're all dome teams. Yeah, let's talk about Rams Detroit, because I searched far and wide to find an angle, but the only thing everybody's going to talk about is Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and Jared Goff.
I think we all know. I mean, I saw some interesting stats. Over the last 7 or 8 games, the Rams are better than the Lions have been the last 7 or 8 games. But then also the Rams have been playing a little bit easier schedule over those games along the way. So you can contour. I mean, if you look season long, the Rams defense is not very good. Both of these defenses have their problems. And the Rams have big receivers and a tight end and a great quarterback. They might be able to have their way with that Detroit defense. And I think the Detroit offense can have their way with the Rams defense. This is going to be a game of mistakes or misfortune, I think. I think both of these teams are good, and I think most people think that either one of these teams can win, but I think most believe that the Lions are the better team. I think the Lions are clearly the better team, and I think whichever one of these teams loses, it's going to be by mistakes or injury or some misfortune along those ways that makes the difference. There's not much room for error between these two teams. What do you think?
The McVay angle is interesting because he had that heart-to-heart talk with Goff. He couldn't wait to run him out. He didn't think he could win a Super Bowl with Goff, even though they got to a Super Bowl with Goff. It's a very interesting angle. You know that I study the draft for a long, long time. And I pride myself on knowing what teams are really good in the draft and what teams are really bad. And I'm very good at that. This is one I missed. I had no clue that the Rams could evaluate the talent, at least so far, with their rookie crop that they have, and how fast that they built this team based on how well these youngsters have performed have surprised me greatly. There's a completely unknown running back that's running 5 yards per carry with 12 touchdowns. They give him the ball 20 times. Everybody knows McVay likes to force feed the ball to the running back, but they can't stop it. They've got, what is his name, Colby Young or somebody but like that, a pass rusher that had a modest NFL draft grade that is in contention for Rookie of the Year on the defensive side of the ball, and nobody even knew who he was. Puka Nacua obviously has become a household name as a 5th-round draft pick out of BYU who did not stretch the field times, but seems to do everything else right. I mean, I can't overlook the fact that these no-names for the Rams are allowing, what do I have, under 61% pass completions. So something good is really happening on the Rams that I didn't see coming.
They're going to be able to stop that run?
Will the Rams be able to stop the run? This is an area that they're average in. And the Detroit Lions have 2 running backs that have combined for 23 rushing touchdowns. So the Lions would be wise to not put Goff in harm's way, to not get him into the mind game with Goff McVay, and to see what that combination. This is, what did we talk about with the running back Gibbs? Oh, all the Detroit people were saying you're not using him enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Whatever. I think Dan Campbell and company played it smart. It's not what you do in game 7. It's what you're going to do now in game 19. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gibbs have 15 carries in this game because this is why they got him.
Yeah, and they're going to show some different looks. They're talking about possibly, having Jamison do kickoff returns. He's a little dinged up though right now, so I'm not sure what his status is for this week. But and then we obviously don't know what's going on with Laporte, but they're such a deep team. They played without the one or more of these guys every week this season, in one form or another.
Yeah. Well, it's there's more to digest on this. I'm sure we'll have this conversation on Friday with Ted as well. I don't have an early opinion, but I just don't think. Are we talking about 3.5 right now?
No, it's a strong 3. You'd have to be a moron to have to lay 3.5.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to bite on 3.5 because of the dynamics of the game. But I just haven't formed. It's Tuesday. I haven't formed an opinion on this particular game.
Yeah, I don't even see a 3.5 at the moment, unless you're paying more than 120.
No, nobody wants to do that.
I have a funny feeling, and I've looked at it all week long. that 52 looks too high to me. Just looks too high.
Yeah.
I think you're going to end up with situations where these teams are settling for field goals more often than you would imagine. I think Detroit's going to want to not want to get in a shootout with Stafford. And I'm not sure the Rams want to get into a shootout with the weapons that Detroit has either. So I think both teams are capable of running that ball and controlling clock. And I think 52 is a big number.
I think both teams would love to show run dominance in this game. I mean, the Rams are going to have a healthy Cooper Kupp, as healthy as he's been all year, because they got to rest some people. Detroit chose not to rest people. And maybe you can update me, because Laporta, we know he got hurt. He's probably going to miss this game. What I saw of the backup tight ends is they look like they lumber when they make catches and moves. They don't have that fluidity that Laporta showed as a rookie. I really noticed the fact that they looked uncomfortable in the past game. And I think one or two other Detroit guys went out with injuries that I thought would cause Campbell to start resting some of the people, but he didn't. You have any other update on injuries?
I don't really. It's certainly not going to be in the serious category. Campbell did say that there's some hope for Laporte, but I don't think so. I think they'd want to sit him out, but we just don't know for sure.
I like the Detroit Lions' ability to slow down the run. So I think as I process this verbally, that's going to be one of the storylines of this game. What if the Rams do not have success on the ground because Detroit is able to slow them down?
Well, I worry about letting Stafford throw more often. If he throws that ball as well as he did against the Saints when he was threading those needles, Detroit's in for some tough day. So I think there's a healthy. Yeah. I think there's a healthy respect by each team against the other team. It's going to. I think Stafford will be greeted with. He won't be booed. He'll be cheered, and it's obviously the narrative the NFL wanted. It's the game of the week. So looking forward to it as a fan. Also.
So Stafford has thrown 4 interceptions in his last 7 games. 2-1-1. So he went 4 games without an interception and 3 games throwing 1 or 2 interceptions. And we know there are times that he has been turnover prone. If he has a clean game, is there any way Detroit loses?
If Goff has a clean game?
No, if Stafford does.
Oh, well,
I'm sorry. Is there? Yeah, let me rephrase that. If Stafford has a clean game, no interceptions, what would be the rationale for taking Detroit in this game?
Well, because Goff is not turnover prone either.
Yeah, Goff had a couple of games where he was bad, but generally was not turnover prone.
Yeah, I mean he's had his bad games, but overall he's not as turnover prone. Who's got more picks, Stafford or Goff?
Pretty close. Goff has 12, and I don't have Stafford's in front of me.
Well, Stafford missed a bunch of games, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple. He was, for him, relatively healthy this year.
Yeah, if you're going to tease the Ram, or if you're going to tease these games, you need to get to the 10 or over the 10 using 7-point teasers or 10-point teasers. You can't tease to the 9. It doesn't do you any good. So to answer that question.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. I don't think I've heard a single person not proclaim their surprise at this line. What about you?
It would be same for me. I would have made it Philly 1. Baker just plays with bruise, this, that, and whatever. So you just go in knowing that he's not 100% healthy. But Hurts, he had a finger issue in that game. And he's probably had some other issues that we haven't talked about. I still think at some point you're going to hear in the offseason that Hurts has to have surgery on some body part or another. Both wide receivers have been banged up for Philadelphia. You get to week 19, the first week of the playoffs, and you just wonder who's healthy and who's not. It's a brutal game.
Well, I think this Philadelphia defense has been literally the worst defense in the NFL for half the season or more. I'm not even sure how they finished for the whole season. Are they even in the top 20?
Well, when they have to stop the pass, they haven't been able to stop the pass. So that's been a problem. People have stretched the field on them on occasion. Offensively, they have a really good run attack, even though the yards per carry is down. But they could do some damage in this game. Tampa generally limits the run. It's kind of an interesting game that I need to decipher more, but I think Miami's going in more banged up than Philly in a way, but how Philly's played in the last half of the season has really surprised a lot of people.
Where do you have Philadelphia's defense for the whole season?
Eyeballing their numbers, my best guess would be around 20th.
I'm not even close to 20th. They're so far lower.
Yeah. See, all I'm doing is looking at their numbers. I don't have a sheet where I have 32 numbers in front of me. And what I see is a C-, D+ in the pass game, a C- in the run game, a sack ratio that's this year very average, 43 defensive sacks, a point ratio that's poor, that's in the bottom 5 to 7. So you're looking at probably 20 was too high, probably 23 or 24 based on my numbers.
Yeah, I've got them at 28 for the whole season. I mean, that's just abysmal. There's no way they can go very far, and I think they know it.
Yeah.
They had their way with Tampa Bay the first game, but there was things to be learned about it. Hurts doesn't do well against the blitz, and once Tampa Bay started blitzing him, they had some real problems there. Is there's some sack data in that game that I thought that you would be interested in? I forget what it was.
Well, offhand, I don't see much in the way of sack differential that interested me too much. Pretty modest there. Philly has a -11 turnover ratio. I did not think that would happen this year. Would have guessed it would have been low positives. So they've been beating themselves.
I mean, when you consider the banged up receivers and just their overall defensive performance, Tampa Bay's healthy. They don't have any problems anymore. The defense is sound. They're going to be able to apply the pressure on Hurts, and Hurts has not fared well under pressure and the kind of coverage that Tampa Bay's defense has been running. It's a matter of what they can do with Baker, and Baker's kind of looked banged up over the recent weeks. So, but he's got healthy receivers, and I think there's value on Tampa Bay here.
Yeah, there's definitely line value there. Tampa was one of those teams that I got wrong at the beginning of the year, and you talked about their defense. They have veterans defensively, and it doesn't hurt to have veterans in a playoff type situation. So I think they can hang with them. If you think that Philly will stop turning the ball over, it makes it, you could make more of the case for the Eagles, but who's to say that they will stop turning the ball over when you have Hurts not at 100%? He'll probably wear some protective something on that finger.
I can't believe this line is even 3. I have a funny feeling that either the Houston line or the Tampa Bay line are going to come crashing at some point. If you like those teams, I would get in early and get in often, because I don't know how those lines are where they are.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up what the current numbers I see are. Yeah, wow, solid 3 for Philadelphia. I really don't see it. Yeah, I think that's.
I keep forgetting. You know what? And here's the brain fart part of it is I keep having it in my head that the game's in Philly, and when I look down and I see it's in Tampa, and Philly's favored by 3, I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, so you hit it exactly. The 2 lines that I think, let's talk about the lines. The 2 lines that I think are the most off are now Philly at 3 and Cleveland at soft 3, hard 2.5 kind of situation. Those are the 2 that I think they're most off. I understand why Kansas City is 3.5. Regular season, you would never put it that way, but it's just circumstantial right now because of Kansas City's rest and Miami's injuries. So I understand that. I don't think that line is necessarily off. And the other 3, the only other thing is I could make a case for Dallas actually being a bigger favorite than they are, but only slightly.
Yeah, I think they're going to bump that line. You know what? I just don't know. I mean, they're going to get buried with teasers on Dallas, but and then they're going to get pounded pretty hard with Green Bay plus 7.5. So I don't know why they have 7.5 sitting there. Like if I had a book, I either have the line on 7 or I have the line on 9. What's the point of having 7.5, 8, or 8.5?
Yeah, I think they corrected themselves with the Buffalo Pittsburgh. You want to keep that out of teaser range because Buffalo would have been a very, very favorable or one that would be very popular. If Buffalo was even 9, it would be popular.
Well, I did get down to 9 yesterday, but that didn't last long.
Yeah. I think Buffalo would be too, quote unquote, public in that game to reset the 9, barring some injury news.
Any other words of wisdom?
Is there a game you're looking well, Rams Detroit here's me not as an outsider to the, talking to a Detroit Lion fan, but to me, that's the most fascinating game on the board is the Ram because of the strategy session, because both quarterbacks switch teams, because of the McVay factor, because of the kids that are really even Detroit, the kids that are in the starting lineup for both the Rams and Detroit. To me, that's the most fascinating game on the board. Is there any other game that fascinates you?
You know what? I surprisingly enough, I have interest in each and every one of these games. I think that they are all interesting in their own ways. I think, the Houston, it's sad to see the Cleveland and Houston has to have a loser. You know what I mean? Because these are 2 teams I could give a crap about, but I respect what they've done all season and the hard work they've done. And, I kind of wish them both success. I'm pretty much anti-Cleveland, if anything, and somehow I like them this year. So I just respect the obstacles that they've overcome. I'm just so sick and tired of, the Miami people, all season long. They just, they're the Rodney Dangerfield of the NFL. And nevertheless, they've got their superstars, and you'd like to see them, not flame out in the wild card round. And Kansas City, obviously, I've already discussed my interest with Kansas City. And Pittsburgh Buffalo's bound to be just a cluster mess. But the Green Bay Dallas, we were kind of rooting for a shootout. I have a feeling it's going to be a Dallas blowout. The Rams Detroit, that's going to be a wild one. And the Philly Tampa Bay will probably be nauseating because Philly will find a way to win by 10 somehow. And blow everybody's teasers out of the water. And then they'll flame out and lose by 3 touchdowns the following week just to screw everybody and piss everybody off.
I think the Philly Tampa game might be the worst played game. I think you're going to see more sloppiness in that game because the teams, the way they're built and the way they perform this year, I think you're just going to have some ugly plays where saying, oh, this team should never have been in the playoffs or that team should. And maybe some of the defenses will cause some harm to some of the offenses. It's going to be the least fluid game, in my opinion. The Green Bay Dallas game might be the anti-national championship game. You may see more missed tackles in Green Bay Dallas than you will have seen last night in the Washington, Michigan. I just think Green Bay tends to miss tackles around the line of scrimmage. Maybe a quarterback run or something like that. And Dallas, they go do or die. They take a lot of risk in terms of trying to intercept passes. So that could be weird.
I know what I was waiting for you to comment on that you haven't, and that is there's one huge edge Detroit has over the Rams.
Uh-oh. Are they wearing special uniforms?
No.
Lem Barney coming back? D'Amico Ryans.
For you of all people to not have brought this to attention.
Go for it.
There's really no excuse for it, and that is the special teams difference. The Rams are absolutely abysmal on special teams, and that very well could make the difference in the game. I completely forgot about that.
Okay, so you can give me a kick, for that. However, I will say there will be an article on Wager Talk that addresses that issue. Did you know that the Rams have attempted 43 field goals this year, and the Lions have attempted 21?
12? Oh, really?
21. It's night and day difference, and some of that has to be attributable to what's going on in the red zone, while some of Detroit's may be attributed to Dan Campbell's method of, hey, we're at the 7-yard line. We're not kicking a field goal. We're going forward, or we're going.
Well, how many times did they give it up on downs inside the red zone?
Yeah. So some of that is there, but the Rams are also under 75% in field goal success. So yes, Chris, you're right.
I think.
Yeah. So you have corrected me there. The Rams do have a special team disadvantage in this game.
I think they're on their third or fourth field goal kicker. He's actually missed 3 extra points, I believe. What they're actually doing on the actual returns and kickoff coverage is notably bad or poor also. So
not much excuse when you play in a stadium that should be kicker friendly, and you're going to be in a dome stadium for this game.
Well, I think that about does it, doesn't it?
That's good for me. We'll be back on Friday. Maybe we'll sneak in a little coaching talk at that time. No need to get into it now. We're locked in on 6 very interesting playoff games. So more to digest between now and Friday.
So same bet channel, same bet time, 12 noon on Friday, correct, Mundo?
Sounds good to me. Can't wait.
All right. Appreciate everybody joining us for our conversation. My computer's fried and I have no options. I hope I'm pressing the right button here to end this.